أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Your Excellency, the President of the Republic, President Adama Barrow, my Lord, the Chief Justice, Honorable Cabinet Ministers here in present, Honorable Members of the National Assembly, senior government officials here in present, members of the diplomatic and consular corps, my colleagues, leaders of political parties, representatives for the faith-based organizations, representatives from the civil society, distinguished invited guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, and indeed fellow Gambians. First and foremost, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to His Excellency President Adama Barrow for not only spearheading this noble initiative, public and private sectors, but also for extending an invitation to me to participate in this crucial national engagement forum. Thank you. The chosen team, our collective responsibility for the preservation and safeguarding of our national sovereignty and the mechanisms to secure our resources, holds profound significance, especially considering the timing of the National Preparatory Committee's task falling on the occasion of the 59th Independence Day anniversary celebrations. By this act of wisdom, the President has demonstrated an unmistakable example of democratic maturity and political civility in the process of enhancing governance and national development in a domestic context of broad national harmony. When we reflect deeply, we will find that the very logic of this convergence find expression in the founding principles of our republic. The national pledge teaches us that it is the combination of government and people working together in unison and harmony that will lead us to achieve our common desires. It also warned us that if we insist on pursuing our personal goals without keeping the collective objective, we shall be divided and we shall fall. The preamble of our national governing instrument, the Constitution, has also affirmed that power is derived from the collective will of the people. I am therefore optimistic for the future of our nation, a nation whose people are predominantly kind-hearted and remarkably tolerant. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, 2 days from today, it will be 59 years since the Gambia won its freedom and sovereignty. We will utilize this occasion to reflect on how far we have come as a country in improving people's quality of life and in entrenching a culture of democracy and human rights. We will reflect on the progressive policies that have provided basic services to the overwhelming majority of the Gambian people. At the same time, we will acknowledge where we have not achieved enough, where expectations have not been met, and indeed, where the promise of our democracy has been challenged. In this regard, I am appealing to the patriotism and sense of responsibility of all compatriots in the country and in the diaspora, so that everyone, wherever they are, sees this historic opportunity to help to steer our country on the path of peace, harmony, security, and progress. As Speaker of the legislative organ of the state, I wish to assure all Gambians that the National Assembly remains committed to fulfilling its social contract with the Gambian people. We are committed to putting in place laws that can boost democracy, rule of law, transparency, peace and stability, and deliver social services to all Gambians without discrimination. The National Assembly will also continue to hold the government accountable to the people of the Gambia through our oversight functions and represent the wishes and aspirations of every Gambian. Your Excellency, compatriots, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, whilst we acknowledge, like any other nation, we have experienced occasional social, political, and economic turbulence, threatening the very foundation of our democracy and stability. Our resilience in the face of adversity has consistently strengthened us. In times of hardship, we have emerged stronger, more peaceful, and undoubtedly more stable. The occasion of this dialogue, set against the backdrop of our Independence Day celebration, provides us with an opportunity to reflect on our journey, appreciate our accomplishments, and collectively chart a course towards a future marked by enhanced democracy, lasting peace and prosperity, and continued stability. Despite the profound animosities among political opponents, the inexorable forces of circumstance and time have consistently fostered reconciliation and collaboration for the preservation of our sovereignty and stability. However, reflecting on historical dynamics between antagonistic political parties, I must acknowledge that the commitment and initiatives undertaken by the government under the leadership of His Excellency President Adama Barrow to unite opposing parties for the common good of the country are truly unprecedented. This government has in recent times not only demonstrated its commitment to democratic values by allowing free exercise of our rights to associate, speak, and assemble, but has also admirably listened to dissenting voices, even those occasionally violating the norms. The government's outreach to opposition parties, aiming to harmonize national efforts and collaborate for the preservation of our nation, democracy, resources, has been particularly evident in recent times. Let us therefore utilize this moment and opportunity in view of our history and experience to put an end to the emerging rise in variants of right-wing and left-wing populism in our politics by crafting viable partnerships among ourselves as political and opinion leaders that reflect the Gambian context in all its nuances, complexity, and opportunities. Your Excellency, the President, compatriots, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we engage in this dialogue to fortify our national solidarity, let us also remind ourselves of our rich cultural norms and values, steeped in religious tolerance and ethnic harmony, which have historically bound us together. While some have lamented the few vocal individuals amongst us whose lack of progressive political ideas transform them into intolerant activists, resorting to derogatory language and profanities to intimidate opponents. It is essential to recognize that political leaders harboring such elements in their ranks inadvertently repel voters rather than attract them. Regrettably, social media has been wielded as a tool to propagate toxic political rhetoric, which, as mentioned earlier, undermines the interests of the perpetrators' political parties rather than advancing their cause. I therefore invite the collective wisdom of all those who led us previously in the making of this country, weaving it together as a proud nation of all who live in it, united in their diversity. May they come forward and bless us as we undertake similar steps that require the nation to pause in attention and reaffirm its commitment to move forward in concert towards the attainment of progressive, peaceful, and prosperous nation. This national dialogue will not stop after tomorrow. It is just the beginning. It is the launch of the dialogue that must spread across our nation as we collectively grapple with the most crucial question: what do we do going forward to serve the people even better? As we grapple with these issues, may we embrace each other as Gambians who share a common aspiration for our people and our country. I am optimistic that the consultative forums that will punctuate this dialogue will critically and frankly discuss the themes under consideration and present us with tangible resolutions to better the lives of our countrymen and citizens and move our country forward. Your Excellencies, distinguished invited guests, may the Almighty Allah bless all of you and continue to preserve the Gambia's peace and stability. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Fabakary Tombong, for those inspiring remarks. The Honorable Speaker touched on several issues centering on democratization and governance. After thanking His Excellency for organizing such a laudable initiative, he talked about their responsibilities as National Assembly members in their role as safeguards in their role in safeguarding the resources and making sure that the executive is held to account. He also said independence is a moment of reflection, a moment to celebrate our accomplishments, but also to discuss and chart a way forward in our collective effort to making sure that we achieve progress, peace, and prosperity. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Mbadi Lamwe Lalu, Member de Diamola, Wolemu Honorable Fabakary Tombong Jatteh, me nyaton kake banko député bungola ate bira ala tentu ay banko nyaton ko jayi a tentu pour ka nying nyom ben sifa men datiten ay tandije ko nyimu ko le mealon ka kumata bake ako banko la kankiliya nyomoyo fenne mealon ko hanina marank kitabo nyim fon kono be wala kono même constitution o nyinti ana raytandi fanan ko nyin kacha be ke kan men kono wala mu independent jurolo de memu banko la fansorode ako keta wati me alon ko mobe nyanta sila ye feleke komala banko ye nyarutan yirwa ko men soto ngam mira fanan mbe banko la yurwal ni nyarta kol fanan selendino la nyamin santo ka warandi ana raytandi fanan ko mo be nyanta denale nga lo ñoo fe nga banko samba ñaatum mbokk yi ku fi jógee wax mooy honorable Fabakary Tombong Jatta ku jiite néegi député yi moom bu mu doon commencé waxtaan bi kaddu yam yi dafa gërëm His Excellency the President pour xel bu neex bu mu am pour indi lu mel nii mu nekk waxtaan bi nga xam ne dafay antu diggante doomi réew yi ñi ñu jiite ak ñun jiite wane na tamit ne lii mu ngi xew bokk si National Independence Day celebration si loolu tamit nekk waxtu bi nga xam ne doomi réew yi dañu war a mën a toog gestu ay jéego yi nga xam ne yooyu leen jël ba àgg fii waaye tamit ñu toog waxtaanee naka la ñu xelalante pour yóbbu réew mi si kanam ñu ngi koy jërëm di ko tentu di ko gërëm di ko santa si waxtu yi ak kaddu yu rafet yi nga xam ne yooyu la fi banku jërëjëf Honorable Speaker Fabakary Tombong Jatta. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, thank you very much. I now have the singular honor and privilege to invite His Excellency, the President of the Republic and Commander-in-Chief, Mr. Adama Barrow, to deliver his remarks.
Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, my Lord, the Chief Justice, honorable members of Cabinet and the National Assembly, members of the Diplomatic and the Consular Corps, representatives of international organizations and development partners, political party leaders, government officials and service chiefs, community and religious leaders, distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen, and students. A series of consultative sessions and dialogue on the theme in focus preceded this National Dialogue Forum aimed at building consensus on fundamental national issues of concern to all Gambians. It is proper, as such, to appreciate the efforts of all those who made this historic event possible. This includes the participants in those sessions, as well as all of you who found time to be here with us. With honor, therefore, I welcome you very warmly and thank you for coming. As I said during the consultative forum, with all the 19 political party leaders in the country, we are making history together through our participation in this unprecedented event. Thus, we should be proud of ourselves and ensure that the event is very well written in the history of the Gambia. Although I am participating as the sitting president, I am also here as a citizen and a Gambian stakeholder like everyone else. As citizens, we have an equal stake in the affairs of the country and should keenly take part in such activities. With this in mind, I do not intend to influence the trend of the dialogue, but to take the stage and tune of the deliberations that follow. In doing this, I pay attention to the context, justification, and expected outcomes of the dialogue. The theme, preserving the nation, safeguarding the state, and securing our resources, has already been unanimously accepted as relevant and timely. I appreciate it better, however, we ought to ask ourselves, who owns the Gambian nation? Who owns the state? Who owns the Gambians' natural resources? And who should preserve the nation, safeguard the state, and secure the resources? Because we, the Gambian citizens, collectively own the country. We have the collective responsibility of taking charge of it, and in the process, take our destiny in our own hands as a nation. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my view that, according to the theme, the goal of this National Dialogue Forum, among other outcomes, is to foster national unity, peace, progress, and stability. For me, preserving the nation implies protecting the people and everything associated with them. In particular, their well-being, honor, values, and all that make them stand out distinctly as individuals and communities bound by blood or social ties, as well as other special characteristics. An expected outcome of achieving this objective is a healthy, productive, and happy Gambian population. As a sovereign state, safeguarding the state implies protecting our land, borders, and everything directly under the authority and responsibility of the government. To cite examples, these include our formal institutional arrangements, national symbols and apparatus, legal frameworks, and seats of authority, especially for the three arms of government. In sum, this is about the autonomy or sovereignty of our motherland. It is only when we achieve this successfully that we can sustain strong institutions, efficient services, progress, and stability. Next, all nations need resources for survival and development. Such resources consist of all the human, economic, and material items of the nation. They incorporate all assets, property, and everything produced or used for production, not leaving out our airspace and the sunshine over and around us. Securing a nation's resources and utilizing them wisely lead to growth in national wealth, development, and guaranteed livelihoods, among numerous other benefits. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, holding this dialogue forum can be justified from various perspectives. Principally, it stems from the Constitution, which says that the Gambia shall be a multi-party democracy. Here we are, guided by the principles of multi-party democracy and pluralism, to dialogue. It is acknowledged in all democracies that dialogue is a democratic principle, thus this national forum reflects democracy at work. The merits of dialogue are many. It is sufficient to mention briefly that it gives the people a voice, as it provides space for their participation in national affairs. Dialogue enhances building consensus and bridges across peoples of diverse composition and persons who hold different opinions. Nationally, dialogue comes with possibility of sharing experiences, knowledge, and new ideas, leading to understanding, cooperation, and subsequently unity, peace, progress, and stability. All these benefits are interlinked and often inseparable. Because the forum has firm democratic basis, I advise that we conduct the proceedings in a true democratic spirit. This refers to the democratic spirit of contributing to the progress and development of the nation, prompted by the spirit of patriotism and informed by knowledge, experience, and sincerity. The forum is neither meant for any party to score political points, nor for anyone to make gains for oneself. I advise that we refrain from using it to attack, degrade, or undermine any person, party, group, or community. Instead, let us utilize it for the good of the nation, while setting the stage for future dialogue, cooperation, and collaboration. The forum provides an excellent opportunity for us to iron out our differences and create a politically and socially amicable atmosphere for all Gambians to coexist peacefully. I propose that the forum adopts realistic resolutions for joint implementation. While we may not agree over certain principles, we can always agree on national frameworks or policies, programs, and projects. The reason is that there is always a common standpoint for which we can work together, remembering that the basic principle of dialogue includes consensus building. Building consensus calls for negotiations, flexibility, and compromise. Ladies and gentlemen, I propose further that the success of this dialogue be assessed by the extent to which it will contribute to enlightening the Gambian citizens, no matter how remote their homes are. Let the impact be determined also by the extent which it will influence political theories in our institutions and the school curriculum to produce democratic citizens. Through this forum, we should be able to eradicate the man-made barriers that breed ill will. Let the forum serve to end anger and hostility, for example, between ethnic groupings and political parties, between the state and the people, and between the formal institutions and the common citizens. I am informed that there is a national coordination and dissemination strategy to make sure that the discussions and outcomes of the forum reach the citizens in the remotest parts of the country. The strategy contains planned regional dialogue forums to give this initiative a true national character. I have noted that the thematic areas derived from the main theme are all in public interest. They are not framed in favor of any person or group of persons. The preparatory committee for the 59th Independence Day anniversary celebration, working independently under the coordination of the Director of Press and Public Relations under my office, Mrs. Ami Bojang Susok, proposed and adopted all the sub-teams. I sincerely commend them for their foresight, wisdom, and hard work. As we celebrate our National Day this Sunday, let us work as an independent thinkers and discuss constructively to achieve our common goal of living peacefully as a united, progressive, and a stable nation. I must observe that to collaborate and succeed in the process of any dialogue, we must activate our sense of wisdom and readiness to learn and the generosity to share what we know. Use our abilities to negotiate and expand our capacity to accommodate divergent views. Act with humility to acknowledge the truth, and if offended, have the goodwill to forgive. Be patient enough to listen and be disciplined enough to withhold hurtful speech. Putting this into practice could mend fences rather than breaking them. I encourage you to participate effectively in the discussions, and I pray that Allah bless our deliberations and all efforts aimed at making the Gambia a safer, better, and more progressive country for all of us. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gambia Police Band. Once more, a big round of applause for His Excellency the President for those wonderful and inspiring remarks. The President asked very crucial questions in his effort to do justice to the theme of the occasion. He said, who owns the Gambian nation? Who owns the state? And who owns Gambia's natural resources? And who should preserve the nation, safeguard the state, and the resources of the country? These are very pertinent questions that every one of us, all and sundry, both here and at home, should reflect on as we take stock of his inspiring remarks, and as we also reflect on the occasion of our Independence Day celebrations. Your Excellency, once again, thank you very much for those wonderful remarks. Based on the program, we've now come to the point where we will have a poem rendered by one of the nation's favorite poets by the name Madam Safia Diouf. Safia Diouf, if you are in the audience, kindly walk to the podium. Safia Diouf's poem is the theme of the occasion. She is, as I said, one of the nation's most favorite poets. Madam Safia, welcome.
African culture. Your Excellency President Adama Barrow, members of the High Table, distinguished guests, Gambians, ladies and gentlemen. I am free to express our African culture, where greetings are the norms and traditions, that every Samanda all you hear is Ibe Khaira to Khaira Taro. From the sleeping dreams of our souls, the Gambia walk to a democratic stage. At 59, we still survive and preserve the Gambia cultural space that pins and clings our hearts with a rich tapestry of pleasure. Within a tilting so eyes, we manage to defend our state, affection and action to liberate our sinking security sovereignty, seeking the blessings of our president for the good recommendations that I believe will pressure its government measures to protect the children and women from rapists and criminals that now threaten our lives, that increasingly knocks me down with questions. Mudefma matid, mudefma majahle, mudefma mai lachde. Amplifying our voice to fight against tribalism, accepting and respecting our different religious beliefs, controlling the atmosphere of this pluralized political environment, nurtured our attitudes towards the civilized way of politics, and lead into a unified Gambia that we ever dream of, continuous, peaceful atmosphere. 18 February 1965, our gallant men emerged and fought for our independence, embracing and celebrating their efforts, appreciating the image of germinating the seedlings of peace, to empower the youths and work to reduce the unemployment rate. That got me hooked to the scale and request to stop the road of the backway dreams and ask if the pendulums looks balanced. Building a Gambia free from corruption, suited not by nepotism, which I weep for my people to dispel. Thereupon I proceeded and promised to query back in my river, which is mortgaged to the foreign vessels barreled by the heavy nets that today make fish expensive. For we signed and took an oath to protect the river Gambia. We signed and took an oath to harness our natural resources. For we back the people for their votes and hope that this dialogue will be the chosen gate that will unlock the potentials of the government aims to refurbish our hospitals and supply our destiny with numerous medicines. Preserve our natural environment, invest in agriculture for better food security, and close the door of daylight robbery. Clothe our young, talented youths with proper education opportunities, deeper than us, more complicated than seeds. Let's foster the broken relationships and live by our ancestors' legendary deeds, and safeguard our sovereignty and create a balanced status of leadership, while invite you to the halam not to beat our ears with empty promises. Konak nañ leen déglu wante te bañ réeroo am suñ diggante. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Madam Safia Diouf, for that wonderful and eloquently narrated poem. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, we've now come to that part of the program where I hand over to Madam Aissatou Keita to moderate the next session, which will be reflections on the thematic areas, just like I hinted earlier on. Aissatou, the podium is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fali Fadera, and thank you for the introduction. I would have stood here and will at some point forget to introduce my name, like I did in the previous Youth Connect. I went the entire program and I didn't introduce myself. Up to the middle of the program, I realized that I never introduced myself. So I told the gathering that I was going to introduce myself later, only to realize that I never did. Until at the end of the program, when the UNDP resident representative told me that, Madam, what is your name? You still didn't introduce yourself. But luckily, my name is Aissatou Keita, like Fali actually said. His Excellency, the President, Mr. Adama Barrow, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Farmer Kari Tombong Jatta, the Chief Justice, political party leaders, cabinet members, international organization representatives and development partners, service chiefs, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am taking over from Fali, and we're going to the second phase of this particular dialogue, where we are going to go in details as to what has been discussed during the past few days. An important convergence, like we said, the consultative forum was held on the 14th, that was on Wednesday, where we had discussions on 6 thematic areas, namely, political environment for sustainable peace and stability, religious tolerance for social cohesion, security, sovereignty, securing sovereignty, safeguarding stability and well-being, ethnic diversity for national unity, media and safeguarding the democratic space, irregular migration and empowerment. These are 6 thematic areas that were identified for discussion. And today, as I'll be introducing the session, and we'll be having repertoires from each of these thematic areas to discuss the resolutions, or to say the recommendations. But how do we get to these recommendations? In each of these thematic areas, Key stakeholders were identified, 20 for each of the thematic areas. They sat and discussed on these thematic areas, discussed thoroughly, and the focus was to look at the prevailing situation as regards the thematic areas in question. Look at the challenges, the opportunities, the threats, and also the way forward. That was where these recommendations were identified. They were tasked with coming up with 5 key recommendations. So they will be present, each of them will come forward, at least to be given 3 to 5 minutes to present these recommendations. And later on, you will be given the opportunity to share your thoughts as regards these recommendations in questions. So without wasting much time or without further ado, I would like to invite the rapporteur for the first thematic area, which is on political environment for sustainable peace and stability, Mr. Seth Matijau.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, Your Excellency. Good morning, everyone. I just want to stand on existing protocol since I've been given 3 to 5 minutes. I'm giving a teacher 3 to 5 minutes. It's too much. And I'm asked to present on a group that was also with my friends from the political side and civil society. So you can imagine the amount of discussion we had and presenting that to this general plenary in 3 to 5 minutes. Well, we'll manage. So our group basically, like the MC noted, was made up of about 20 people from various political parties and civil society actors, as well as members of the inter-party committee. And you can imagine having civil society, political leaders, and also, you know, just political leaders. That kind of conversation would not be easy. So where we started was basically to look at, we were asked to make a presentation from the Afrobarometer findings to highlight what are the citizens saying in terms of the direction, the progress of the country, but most importantly on critical issues of trust, of corruption, of threat to safety in the neighborhoods, views on Gambia Police Force, the implementation of the recommendation of the TRRC, Truth and Reconciliation and Reparation Commission. These were all issues that we presented, and then we went on to discuss the 5 thematic issues that we were asked to recommend. And to get into that, and I think when I listened to His Excellency and all the speakers, one of the points that they've all highlighted, we also discussed, was the issue of the Constitution. And the issue of the Constitution, I've been also saying that in this country, we keep saying New Gambia, but for me, there is no New Gambia if there is no new Constitution. And I think this also resonated with a lot of us that discussed that. But then the challenge is, how do we take this Constitution from where it is now to the next stage? And there we had an interesting debate, and we concluded that to build trust in the public, but also to build trust in the stakeholders, we recommended to reintroduce the 2020 draft constitution in its present form to the National Assembly, and that the National Assembly members to discuss and amend the constitution and appropriate. And why we reach here is that because whether we do it outside, we do it inside, at the end of the day, the National Assembly will have to discuss it. They will invite partners, they will have people to engage. So we believe that it is important that they set the space going. But in that process, we also remember the importance of raising awareness, especially when it comes to engaging with political parties. And then there we recommend that the IPC engagement with political parties on the draft constitution. But also we recommended for the IEC and the National Council for Civic Education, as well as the IPC, to lead efforts when it comes to awareness campaigns on the draft constitution. And with this approach, it will take a whole society approach so that nobody will say that you are left behind, and that the National Assembly will do its responsibility of allowing all these different voices to come before them, to express themselves, and then through that we can take it as a national conversation. Secondly, the issue we talked about is the issue of electoral reform. I mean, if you know us in civil society, we've been tracking and following the reform process for quite a long time, and we know that there are issues. And there are the issue is not more on the lack of general trust in the process, but there are issues that we need to do to help amplify the electoral process. And this is where we talk about helping to institutionalizing the IPC, because we feel that the IPC, and I think they are here, the founders are here, they are in the same room, they have done a quite important job of establishing the IPC, and today with limited funding they are still doing the important job that they are supposed to do, and therefore we recommend that this should be institutionalized so that, you know, they can receive funding from government so that, you know, it becomes a national institution. Another controversial issue, you know, that we debated was the issue of attestation. You know, attestations have been one, and you know, most of the dialogue forums that I attended, this particular issue keep coming up, and we felt it was important that we bring it here. The issue of attestation, you know, allows for one issue of non-Gambian voters, because we hear that coming up, but we also hear the problems of underage voters, and I think all the domestic observers and all those people have seen these things, and this has been recommended, that we need to look at this and then end it. But the challenges of how to go about this was also very raised, because knowing that there is inequality in our society, the rural population are always left behind. When you want to get documents, you come here. It's time that we need to start thinking about those people that are there. And in fact, most of us are from those rural communities. So therefore, why do we have to make it difficult? So those were things that we also highlighted. But we also say that within the electoral process, promoting integrity, trust, and confidence in the electoral system is critical. But also we recommend that, and I think this was a recommendation that was taken up by the IEC representative at that, and that also, you know, speak to our confidence in the process. Publishing results by polling station, not aggregated results, because this also helps in creating trust, so that, you know, all this post-electoral violence that we experience in many other societies could be avoided. So the other issues we talk about was cleaning up the voter register, especially of foreign and underage voters, nomination fee of candidates. I think this is a controversial issue still, but I think it's important that we highlight it. Reviewing the voter registration, as I mentioned before, and also disclosure of source of funding. We do not want anyone that is not Gambian to contribute to our electoral process. They cannot make the decision for us, and this was heavily discussed during our engagement. Therefore, we need to look at how do we institutionalize processes to ensure that there is a disclosure of source of funding, which is already done through the IEC, but it is important that it is put to the public, because election is not an individual issue, it's a public matter, and therefore the public must know how it is funded and who is funding, so that we will not sell our country to somebody else. Parties are encouraged to send, and also this is the issue, you know, in terms of the electoral process. It was noted that in most cases, political parties will send agents through political processes of people that might not be able to read or understand the political process. So it was recommended that political parties, you know, also take that responsibility of training their agents, but also sending people that will understand the process and are able to, you know, accurately record and take note of all the proceedings. The other point, which is the third recommendation now, is the inclusivity of women. We recommended for gender parity, and in this country we usually say it is a country of all Gambians, but in fairness, women continue to be left behind. And I think those are issues that we also, highlighted so that we can get that. So the other point was economic management, the borrowing. We need to start thinking about that. You know, who's going to pay it? Yes, we're going to have investment and all that, but who's going to pay that? The future is also thinking about that. But also we talked about strengthening the productive sector of the country. We don't need to import food. We can produce our own food. And usually we talk about this country being a poor country, but I disagree. You cannot have a 80-kilometer coastline and a full river, and half of it which is fresh water, and yet still we continue to be poor. So we said that we need to strengthen the productive sectors of this economy, and that require people working. And the final point I will not have to elaborate is the fight against corruption. I don't need to explain that, because we know it's one of the problems that continue to affect our society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seth Mati Jau. Those were 5 recommendations that emanated from the thematic group on political environment for sustainable peace and stability. What I would also like to urge or request is you can take note of the points that are being indicated here, that are the 5 key recommendations of each of the thematic groups, so that when, at the end of the entire session, when you want to come in with your questions, it will be easier that way. So next, I would like to call on Mohamed Lamin Sane, who will also deliver on the recommendations from the thematic group on religious tolerance for social cohesion.
Assalamu alaikum. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Your Excellency, Mr. President, Chief Justice and Speaker of the National Assembly, I stand here observing all existing protocol. You are hearing from me, but I am speaking on behalf of a group. A religious group that have a diverse representation from Gambia Supreme Islamic Council, Gambia Christian Council, and Ahmadiyya Jamaat and Baha'i. But for reason beyond our knowledge, a representative from Baha'i was not present, but all these 3 religions were fully represented. We have religious tolerance for social cohesion. And we understand when you talk about religion, you're talking about something very sensitive. You touch people's emotions, their feelings, their belief. And then having different people, 20 in number, sitting together, talking about their issues that is affecting them in terms of their religion, it is something very important, but something very intense as well. So you could imagine how intense our discussion would be, but this is the Gambia. We also learn to disagree to agree, and alhamdulillah, we have come to an agreement to bring 5 recommendations that was required from us. We started our session with presentation from both councils. Father Gabriel Allen presented on the topic from a Christian perspective, and Dr. Omar Jah also presented the topic from an Islamic perspective. Then we had discussions, debate, we also have questions and answers, and then we bring together all our recommendations. We had about almost more than 10 recommendations, but we are able to bring them all together to amalgamate them and try to see which recommendation and which one are interrelated, bringing them together until we have 5 recommendations that we presented on the 14th, and today, inshallah, this is what I'm going to present as well. Our recommendation number 1 was the government to be impartial in dealing with all religious groups in the country and appoint 2 religious focal persons in the ministry responsible for religious affairs who will be working in collaboration with the proposed interreligious committee. We understand in the Gambia, though we have in majority we have Muslims, but we also know that we have other group of faith in this country, which is Christianity, Baha'i, Ahmadiyya, and maybe others. But we want the government, as it is representing everybody, to be impartial between all these religious groups. And also, though we have a council, 2 councils mainly that are here, we also have a ministry, not a particular ministry for that matter, but a ministry that is responsible for religious affairs. But we want the work of the 2 councils to be easier, and when we have problem in terms of religious issues, we can have response as quick as possible. So that's why the group also recommend that the government to appoint 2 religious focal persons from Christians and from Muslims to be attached to the Ministry of Ministry responsible for religious affairs. That will be who will be working closely with the inter-religious committee that we also propose to establish. But these 2 religious focal persons will be recommended from their councils, so government will appoint them. Number 2, the 2 religious councils to establish an inter-religious committee to deal with inter-religious matters and interreligious dialogue to be continued and properly structured. We also know that when you come to Islam, or issues that have to do with Islam and Muslims, we have a council that is responsible for that, which is Gambia Supreme Islamic Council. And when you come to Christianity, or issues that has to do with Christianity, you have a council that is responsible for that. But many a times, issues will emerge in the country that has to do with interreligious issues. And sometimes, it might be difficult to deal with it. But that's why we recommend that the two councils establish an interreligious committee that will be dealing with issues that has to do with interreligious. Number 3, the president to nominate 2 representatives at the National Assembly from the 5 nominees he nominates upon the recommendation of the 2 religious councils respectively. We also learn that the president have this privilege to appoint 5 members at the National Assembly. So the group also, because all the National Assembly members that are voted for in the office, they are not actually representing a particular religion in that honorable assembly, even though they may be Muslim or Christians, but actually they are not representing a particular religion. And sometimes it's a country. We come up with religious issues will come up, and the debate will be heated. So we feel that it is necessary for President to nominate 2 from Christian and 1 from Christians and 1 from Muslims to represent them at the National Assembly. But these 2 will be recommended by the 2 councils. Number 3, the third recommendation is civic education to include religious tolerance in the school curriculum. Proper training and monitoring of teaching religious education done by the proposed interreligious committee and strengthening religious education across the board. When we talk about religion, you cannot properly practice your religion without actually knowing what the religion says. But in as much as we encourage people to study their religion, we also want to make sure that they studied their religion from a right and reputable sources. We want education, we don't want indoctrination. That's why we want the teaching of religious education in schools be monitored, and those that are teaching also be properly trained. But it will be done by the interreligious committees that we propose. The 5th recommendation is the government to empower the 2 religious councils financially and legally to give clearance to visiting preachers, and the registration of churches and mosques be done upon the recommendation of the 2 religious councils. We know that we have 2 councils. Alhamdulillah, they are very powerful and very influential and very supportive as well. But we also know that they work closely with the government, but we still want them to be empowered. We still want them to be supported. There are a lot of activities that they want to embark on, but because of finance and because of legally certain restrictions that are there, they may not have certain power to exercise. We want the government to support them so that they will be able to function on their role. And also, this power includes them to be able to give clearance to the visiting preachers that are coming into our country. Because in as much as we are so much care about religious tolerance in our country, we need to also care about people that are coming. It can also be a threat to our social cohesion and our religious tolerance. And the Gambia is known, it's an example in terms of religious tolerance. So anything that could be threat to this valuable thing, we need to make sure that we put a barrier to that. That's why we also recommend this one. And also churches as most registration can also be recommended by the 2 councils. I am already done. So I ended here, and on behalf of my group, this is the 5 recommendations that we have. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed Lamin Sane. So I'd like to urge all the other rapporteurs that are coming, you try to make it a bit brief. It's Juma today, and people will want to go for Juma prayers, and we want to have the contributions from the floor before we head to that. So next I will call on Louis S.A. Alsan to deliver the recommendations on ethnic diversity for national unity.
Good morning. Oh, it's afternoon already. Good afternoon, everyone. Your Excellency, Chief Justice and Speaker of the National Assembly, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am the rapporteur for thematic group 3 on ethnic diversity for national unity. So the Gambia is known for its rich diversity with numerous distinct cultural practices, languages and traditions among the various ethnic groups we have. And identifying ethnic diversity is one of the issues why one of the issues why we have in conflicts or disagreements. We carefully selected our stakeholders, and we invited the likes of Mr. Hassum Sise, who gave us some historic background, the likes of Joliba Kuyate, Paramount Chief, Alcalos, and some other experts from the Ministry of Education and other